we're gonna try to keep this meeting, Brent, to 30 minutes. At the end, like to talk a little bit about how your ChatGPT documentation, but let's cover first the next steps. Now that we have the development environment set up, what do we have to do to find the code that relates to the user interface changes we want to make?
One thing I think we discussed was, were we going to run the updates today before we back up?
Backup. Sure. Good catch. Yeah, I remember you registered. We're on thin ice here if we don't back up.
Yeah. Basically everything goes kapooey if we make mistakes.
Yeah.
It should be good. All right. But it's always good to be careful. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen and let's just go build it yourself / I think this was the right one.
My experience is that if you manage a project well, you will spend as much time on documentation as you do on development. In fact, of the discovery, design, development, and deployment phases of a project, often you're advised when you're budgeting time and money to allocate 25% of your time and money for each of those 4 phases of project management. So backing up is, sometimes, and documentation is sometimes not counted in the budget, and you always get burned when you don't count it.
And then if you don't document, when something goes wrong later, you have no clue what to do, and that burns time too. So even if you don't lose the money up front from if you just forego documenting, it still gets you. It always sneaks up on you somewhere. All right, so let's start with, first thing we'll do is we'll get the database, because the database is the most critical. I mean, even hypothetically, if we lost all core files, but we could restore the database, even if some plugins we couldn't figure out, most of the data will be there. So that's first step. Then the core files also matter. So I think we could actually do 2 at once. FileZilla is going to take a while to download. So if I start downloading files now and then walk you guys through how we back up the database, we'll have basically all the files for WordPress, and then we'll have the database. Server environment is less critical, but that will be fast in here too. Like you can see 7.2 PHP version. That's half the questions we were going to ask about the environment. So let me open up FileZilla. It has been a while, but let's see if we're lucky. I do not see BIY, so let's grab the notes, see if this works. Okay, so just so I don't go too quickly, 2 parts of this backup. First part, we're going to start the FTP file download of all the files on the server under the builder blocks folder. That is basically going to put us in a position where we can just drag and drop those files onto any server and then connect the database, and hypothetically it should work. There is a specific file in the downloads. It's called wp-config. I think it's like either I think it's hyphenated and it's .php. It's in the root directory of the files. That is where you would adjust the database username, password, the host or IP address. So if you change complete internet providers or on a new server, local server, whatever it is, you need to basically pair your data source with your files, right? So the application is going to look to the data, log in and all that stuff, and be able to have the credentials to access. So step 1 right now, we're going to take the FTP info. Let's see, changed back February. Let's try this first one. This was right off the wiki. So we're gonna put that IP in host, username. So logged is this, and make sure I got the L. Okay, I do. Password is here. And it should be port 21 by default. So you guys all have experience with FileZilla and FTP in general, right? I presume.
Yeah.
Okay.
They should. Well, Ryan, I don't know, but at any rate, I think that everyone understands the value of it.
Think of it like Dropbox or Google Drive. You're basically just accessing files somewhere else. The only difference is rather than it being isolated service, you're really going into a computer. It's probably a good way to think of it. You're accessing a certain directory or directories. It's file transfer protocol as the acronym. Okay, so we got in. So usually, just to kind of, this might be redundant for you guys, but you'll see like a www folder, an HTTP folder. So I presume this is the main directory for public facing files. And then where you need to figure out what folder, the lazy way that I'm gonna have us roll with is just to look at where we are. You know, we don't need to find any fancy documentation for this part because we know the application URL, and everything should live in the subdirectory. So we should still document this as here's the URL. You know, go to that when you're in the FTP. But that's how I figure that out quickly, is just look at that, right? So in my notes, I'm gonna say path to files, because that will be relevant for somebody that doesn't know this, right? BIB, oh, HTTP docs. And then you want to go to BIB. So that way people know where to go. Next, we're gonna, so we're in here. So now we see there's the WP prefixed folders. You know you're definitely in WordPress territory where everything starts with WP. The one file I was referencing is right here. If you know, assuming you know how to get the database online, the only file you need to edit at all in the WordPress directory is this one file, wp-config.php.
Excuse me, Brett, may
That
I
connects to the
interrupt?
database.
May I interrupt just a second?
Yeah.
To get everyone on board. Notice how well Brent named his files. I notice, Ari, you're doing that now too. Hopefully, we were a good influence on you. Brent follows our file naming convention very careful. The files are very descriptive. They're hierarchical, so you see WP first, and then the next descriptive word, all lowercase, and should be dashes, not underscores. I see one underscore there, but should be all dashes in the word in the file names. Okay, sorry, Brent, for interrupting. Just
No worries. And actually, I'm gonna pass off this credit to the WordPress team. So these files are automatically created. So more so than me taking credit for follow and build it yourself, here's another way to frame this. WordPress is one of the largest used content management systems in the world. I think at one point it was like 20 something percent, almost 30% of websites used it. Build it yourself, right? John just said, hey, Brent followed the build it yourself rules when you name these. This tells you the build it yourself rules will prepare you for building software in the actual application too, right? Any company. Because this is the biggest content management system for web design, I think, used ever. And you see overlap with all the rules Build It Yourself has been teaching you. So if you ever need proof that what John and anyone from Build It Yourself is teaching you is going to be valuable, I think this is a perfect, you know, use case, right? The team at WordPress are following the same rules. And I think that's pretty, speaks for itself. You know, but I'll still take the credit. So thanks. All right, so all we need to do is take that BIB folder, right? And then I'll go to, let's see, download. You know, you don't even need to overthink it, right? I'm just gonna go over here. I'm just gonna take the BIB folder. I'm just gonna drag and drop it. And that's it. It's copying. And then I'm just gonna drop this into the build it yourself Dropbox, or I'll put it on Google Drive, share the link with you guys, and we have it good. It's done.
Great.
Now to call out one other thing, I said the only file that you need to edit is this one. That's usually true. I want to call out one exception to that rule. There is another file called .htaccess. This isn't unique to WordPress. The WP configuration file is unique to WordPress. So what the htaccess rules do, there's like a rewrite engine that will help like redirect URLs. There's different rules in there. In my experience, the one that's in here usually works, but in a different environment, once in a while, you'll see something go weird and maybe you need to regenerate this or fix it. Shouldn't need to, but I'm going to call that out as a second place to look if you ever go to set this up somewhere else. Now, if you're on the same operating system, same server application software, like let's say you're on Linux, you're on Apache, you have the same version, PHP, same version, MySQL server, I don't think there will be anything that needs to be changed. And in general, again, it should be fine. All right, so let's move past that. This is backing up. The next thing we need to do is back up the database. So the database, actually, I don't really know which one. That was where we got held up last time. I wasn't sure which BIB. So it's probably like the 2021 one, but it's better to know than to guess. And the way you can check this out, as we're backing up our files, we're lucky because it does the root directory first, since those aren't in subfolders. So we can actually go into the WP config file. Right, I'll just double click that. And now we're here. And if we look, DB name, DB user, DB password, right? DB host. It's localhost because we think, hey, this server is not local, it's online, but to the files relative to where the files are stored, it's the local machine that it's on, right? We're accessing it via, a web request. When it calculates everything and renders the page on the PHP server-side code, that is local to the files. So don't think in terms of absolute, think in terms of relative to where the files are stored when it's looking to access the database. So here, that's the name of the database. If we move this to a different web server and have a different user and different database name, because let's say the prefix rules are already in stone, we can't adjust them. This is the things you need to edit. Probably just these two lines, maybe this one, because a lot of web hosts will say localhost, but sometimes the infrastructure on a web server, like a web hosting company, they may have it that the databases are kind of like separated from your actual host, or they may have it on the same computer. So that's also yet to be known if you go to move this. All right, so BIB 2021, let's take a look. BIB 2020, ooh, actually, let's take a look. I see that's the user. I was looking at the wrong one. There we go, 3381. 3381 BIB 2021. That's the correct one. And if you ever are unsure, still for some reason, let's say bad file naming and you're just double checking, WP options should have the URL of your website, and you see it's /BIB, the same one that ours is named. So we want to back up this whole database. I'm going to go a little quick and kind of narrate over this. So if you go back and watch it, you can gather more, but this routine, we should document how we're going to do it, and we'll try and pull it from ChatGTP, right? So we logged in to the Plesk panel to access our server. There we went to the MySQL, like there's a drop down with different MySQL databases. We selected the right one and wound up on the PHP MyAdmin dashboard. From here, we're going to click the top level database, not one of the tables. You'll see it selected. We're going to go to the Export tab. Under Export, we should be able to leave it quick, display the minimal options. It's SQL, just click Export and we should be fine. So let's just double check, export in tables. and a download happened, and we have a .sql file. So we should be good. I'm just gonna glance. I mean, I usually do SQL and it should work okay. The only time, and I'll call this out again as a unique scenario, if you're forced to try to launch this application on different settings than it was natively created on, one SQL version to a new SQL version maybe won't work. I've had the issue where I go to move a website from like a different version, like an old version of MySQL to a new one, and sometimes the syntax is messed up and it doesn't work. And that's when you can go to like custom, and then you can begin to specify like different options and stuff and figure out, what is breaking. Sometimes maybe there's like a legacy option, or maybe you do something like CSV format, which maybe will be more universal. But to keep it simple, just do SQL. In our use case, we're going to stay on the same environment, same web hosting right now. There should be no issue with importing the export from the same environment. So you're good. Okay, so that's backed up. Sometimes this will pop up, and I never actually looked into this. What I normally do, and here's my logic. And if you guys ever find out otherwise, I'm open to learning too. But basically, it says the target file already exists and it wants to overwrite. I know this shouldn't exist, right? I'm dragging and dropping the folder from FTP onto my local computer. So I say overwrite, always use this action, apply to current queue. So that means anytime it for some reason sees the same file and it wants to overwrite it, I just say okay, because I know that file is not overwriting something I already have. It's not that big of a deal. So I just go okay. Yeah, if it was like I'm dragging this folder into merging it with the directory that already has files in it, I'd be concerned with that message. But I always just dump it into like it's a new folder, so it shouldn't matter. Last call out there. Let's see. Actually, I think that we're pretty much good here. We have this will continue downloading. It's gonna take a few minutes, but most of it's done. I have a little bit left. DB's backed up, files are almost done. After this, we're gonna go through an update routine. So let's take the time to document, right, this process. Duplicate. So we'll call this one backup procedure, right? So what we want to do is say, well, let's first specify database. So log into Plesk. We're going to select the correct database. We should get to PHP admin from there. Let me specify. Drop down. Just to kind of give some reference. Land PHP admin. Select top level DB. Click export. And then I think we just confirm download. We can add some specifics in there, but that's the general process there. And then files.
Dan, Ryan, excuse me, Brent, for interrupting. Dan,
Yeah, go for it.
Ryan and Rodrigo, it would be great if you guys can be responsible for backing up this application, the BIB application, periodically. I think this will give you a hefty appreciation for how a relatively complex application is organized. And it's a really valuable skill. If you're working for a company, when you're working for a company, you can assure them you know how to back up a complicated application. That's a really, really valuable skill. Thanks for spelling this out so carefully, Brent.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, and I think we can expand upon it. It's a good bone structure. And if you guys even want to go in and take like screenshots from the video, the recording, and add them in and kind of circle things. And I think Build It Yourself always says the goal should be that somebody that, I forget the exact specification, but somebody with some background that's like has technical ability in what we're doing.
A freshman engineer at MIT in computer science should be able to start making edits to the code in one day. Our documentation has to be good enough so that we meet that documentation standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like they shouldn't have to start Googling how does WordPress work? Where does WordPress store something? They are technical, obviously, right? That MIT computer science software should be easy. Interfaces should be easy for them, but they don't have the steps. They need the recipe. So this should be baked out. The more you add to this, the better, but don't add so much it becomes tedious to follow. I think that's always a good measure too, right? If your checklist or procedure is so long and daunting, human nature will force us to take shortcuts. So you should have the necessary steps, but don't inflate information and start giving them backstory on how everything is, because that you could say, click here to learn more, and you should make a separate page for that. How WordPress works, right? Some documentation there. It's great to have that if you want to make it, but don't put it in the procedure. Is that fair?
Yeah, fair.
Okay.
Excellent, Brent. Yeah. Let's not.
So I'm going to call out some critical files that if there's anything that matters the most, the core WordPress files don't really matter because WordPress is well maintained. You can always re-download the core files for whichever version, still back them up and upload them. But if there's anything that you want to hold closest to the chest, it's going to be the WP content folder, because that's all your image uploads. That's all your themes and plugins selected and any modifications to your themes. This is truly the most unique folder, right? That is where you added stuff to the WordPress application. So this has plugins, themes, uploads, images. So I won't spell it out in too much detail, but that's kind of what's in there. And then the MySQL is records that make it work. All right, the last component, right? We have the stuff backed up, database files. If for some reason LisaWeb went like out of business and they said you have 30 days to move your stuff, you could go figure out what your server environment is. But let's make a different scenario. Let's say they just disappear off the face of the planet. You have no clue why. Can you figure out what you need to set this up? You have to document the environment also. So what we're going to do is make another slide. This does not have to be necessarily pretty. We can just take a screenshot and paste it. But let's just put server environment. And I think documentation, you build it out more and more as you go. And that's, again, the balance between making it too tedious versus, like it needs to be something that you can do quick enough to make it beneficial and not take you away from the task at hand, but you still need to do it. So you need to find the balance, right? You go back, add a little bit more sometimes. You can iterate over it and make it better and better, depending on what the goals are. But it has to meet a bare minimum. It can't be useless. So let's go back here. One of our things we need to know is PHP version. So I'm going to pop up snipping tool.
Excuse me, Brent. Keep going. All right, I registered. You may need to leave. So, as you say, this will all be recorded, and this is probably stuff you already know. So, feel free to leave anytime. All right,
Okay, okay. Hey, I will probably leave soon.
great. Okay,
Thank you, Brent, for the explanation.
You're welcome.
See you everyone next week.
See
okay.
you.
Bye, all right.
Bye. Right, the next, so we know the PHP version. The next thing is what MySQL version are we using? I'm going to click on databases just to see if it shows us. If it doesn't, I'm not seeing it jump out at me. So the other place you can look is actually inside of PHP MyAdmin. So let's just see if we can figure this out. Okay, so the database server, localhost via Unix socket, server type. MySQL web server, database server. Saying MariaDB. That's interesting. This one is saying MySQL PHP version is this. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Looks like the server and the MySQL server actually are different servers. And there's some different things going on over here. I'm going to be transparent, not completely sure. Because when I have local hosts, I usually just look at what I have installed and I usually deal with it there. I'm pretty sure we did a MySQL. Pretty sure this is MySQL, but saying MariaDB for server version. That might be what's the database server. Maybe that's the software running everything. I'm pretty sure the database type is MySQL. Down here it's saying Nginx for the web server, and then there's this number. If I'm version info, okay, PHP version info. So I'm gonna screenshot this whole thing. And I'm gonna circle back around to that one because I think that might just burn time trying to figure out which one it is to nail that down. And the likelihood of us needing that is much lower than just needing the backup files. So see, that's where coming back to that makes more sense because I think it's going to be too much of a roadblock for this webcast, like for today, because we only have a little bit of time left. But we can make a little marker in here and says, add a note that says confirm the MySQL version. Then we come back to that like later in the week or something. But it's not a critical piece of documentation. Like we're not going to wind up in a spot where we can't restore this if we don't know what version, because there's only so many versions of MySQL server. It'd become a pain in the butt to try to figure out which one by trial and error. And realistically, we can start with the latest versions and probably figure it out pretty quick if we were going to implement this locally. And most of them are compatible, like within certain clusters and ranges. So that's where I'm kind of making that call to say, let's circle around to that one. It's non-critical, but it's still useful. And we'll just leave a note for ourselves. When we get this up into the wiki, maybe we make that red text and we know we have to come back and make it bold. And yeah. Okay, so now that we should have all these files downloaded. We know they're safe. I'll upload those to like Google Drive after. Now it's time we get to break the site. Just kidding. We get to run updates and see what happens. So an update procedure is something we can build out. Now that's probably not critical to have documented. And as I walk through this, we can probably extract that from the transcript. ChatGTP will probably pick up enough of this. So what I like to do is I like to iterate through the updates because there's usually 3 sets of updates. Well, 3 types. There's the core files where we have WordPress, right? WordPress core. That can break a lot of things. Then we have plugins, and then we have our theme. Now, one thing to double check, and this is a good call out. There's themes and child themes, and child themes allow you to modify a parent theme. You can update the parent theme, and the child theme retains the, customizations. I don't think we modified the child. I don't think we modified the parent theme directly. It's a bad practice, but sometimes it's okay. Like if you're doing something quick, and if there are any functions, I want to make sure we don't lose them. So to check for this, and we won't have to do this ongoing, we just check this once. I went to Appearance in Theme Editor. Now I clicked into functions.php, and I can see what's in here. At a glance, it may be confusing because you're going to see stuff in here, but the core theme, parent and child theme become relevant when you make a child theme, else you just call it the theme by default because it's the singular theme. So the singular theme that we're using, it has code in it, but that's because the theme developer put this in. We can tell because there's a lot of references to Astra, and that's the name of the theme. And I'll usually put some obnoxious comment with a bunch of spaces before I put anything unique, just so I can identify it fast. Now let's see what this is. Here we go.
Brent, can you like edit that code or
you can? You can actually just start typing in here and click save. It's going to do a validation process where if you have something messed up, it will tell you, hey, you can't do that. But yeah, you can definitely do it directly here.
That's one beauty, would you say, Brent, of using a tool like WordPress? It flags bad code.
Yeah, it will say, hey, you're missing a semicolon, or hey, there's some unexpected you can't save. It doesn't prevent you from breaking your site if you put in a function that's properly coded, but it's just a bad function. But if there's a syntax error, it can identify that very quickly and stop you.
By the way, guys, I just Googled what percentage of websites use WordPress. It turns out there's almost 1 billion websites that are based on WordPress, and that's 40% of all the websites on the internet, 43%. So
this is a good skill. The reason why a lot of websites use WordPress, well, there's some people who, and I mean, I wonder if that figure might even be low technically, because I know there's some companies that will white label WordPress, erase some of the, like I worked with a real estate company once, and they needed to have MLS listings and stuff, like basically live feed of like different homes that they're responsible for, being able to search and have a contact form for general searches. And there was this company called Playster, and they made WordPress themes, and I used that in the first site. They came back to me and they wanted an upgraded site, and Playster had ditched making WordPress themes and had their own platform. But the funny thing was, as a WordPress user, I recognized a lot of things that felt like WordPress. There's a chance it wasn't, and they were just inspired by it. But you got to think, if you're a company who's making themes, you make some money, you want to pivot to being a platform like a SaaS company, right? You have software as a service online. Here's a full, complete tool. Why not take an open source tool you're legally allowed to use and leverage it, right? And then you have your own fork of WordPress. You can integrate any major updates. They're free for you, right? Someone else is doing them, and you just maintain your side of it. And now you charge a monthly fee. So there's companies out there that may be using it. And then one side of WordPress, there's managed types of WordPress sites like WordPress.com. You don't really get to customize anything, but large companies like WordPress, because you can actually add in so many different types of code that help you get found online. So most marketing agencies lean in on something like WordPress because Wix, Weebly, and all the other tools, they give you a little bit of ability to like structure your site in a way that Google and other crawlers like. But WordPress by far outshines like everything I've seen. So there's like it ties into your business revenue, the ability to actually get your site found, and WordPress enables you to. So I'll kind of leave it there so I don't get too off track. But it's fascinating because there's a huge benefit. But as you guys can see, this is a lot more complicated than Wix, right? You can't just run this. So if you're going to use WordPress for what it's capable of, it's worth doing. But if you're going to use WordPress as just a general site builder, I recommend people to go to like Google Sites or something with a drag and drop builder that's simple, because the amount of maintenance you need to do to really get under the hood is, it's painful, you know, if you don't know what you're doing. All right, so I do see some artifacts in here of things we did. I'm normally will leave larger, more annoying things here, but I see we have 3 spaces. And if you look above, there's no 3 spaces. That's usually how you can tell I've been there. I nowadays I leave a little bit more, like in between functions. I'm surprised I didn't do something better here. But function, display default excerpt. And then I'm looking here, get permalink, build it. So at the time, I think Astra theme will, this is one of the things that might break, right? This function might no longer work because Astra theme has had many updates. But the good news is you can just build it into the customizer now. You don't actually have to have code to do it. They've made the theme better, not worse. So we might not have to even put this function in later. But what this is doing, let me show you the exact correlation to what this code is doing. You see how these say build it? This function took readme, you know, for blog posts and, you know, posts in general, and we globally edited them all to say build it, since build it yourself, build it blocks, you know, that's the action we want, the CTA. From here, insert search on all pages, plus CSS for footer. So instead of, at the time, you know, we could have built custom templates, but we only needed this one feature added, a search at the bottom of the page. This is injecting HTML that just adds a search form, like a search field, and then it stylizes it. You can technically build page templates, and the newest version of WordPress actually gives you the ability to say single blog post. Then you can customize the template with the drag and drop builder, and then that globally applies to all single posts, which is really powerful. Like they've came a long way since we built this. So this is also able to be replicated without anything in the functions file. And I think, let's see if there's anything else. Limit searches to posts only. Okay, so this last one. So in WordPress, and again, this is going to be stuff that will take more than one time here to digest. It will take some actual hands-on, you know, using of WordPress. And some of it may not be relevant to maintenance or edit in the site, but good background knowledge to understand what's going on that we don't necessarily need to touch on again. This is the third function. So we have 3 custom functions. The last one being, we have a filter for the search. So if you come over here and I want to search something, right? I got my search bar up here. And if I go into another page, let's see. Okay, it's not in the footer, that last code. Maybe the CSS is in the footer, but I think this is the code we're injecting. So no matter what page you're on, you always have a search bar. And I think we did it so we don't have to like worry about accidentally deleting it or styling it. It's global. But if we search something like test, or we type in robot, so we have a module pop up, but we also have this top level page called robots, right? If we type in robot, we're searching for modules, technically posts, right? So we only want to see the actual post popping up here. That's the type of, that's how we label these individual pages in the hierarchical structure, right? We have category pages, we have regular pages. This is a blog post. So what we did was this filtered the search function to only show modules. We don't want to see the home page listed. We don't want to see a category page listed. We just want people to see modules available and be able to click build it and really just zero them in on the results. So this cleaned up the search because WordPress natively will include pages, any post type, any content on the site will show up in search. We want to limit it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. We don't need to save this file because we did a backup. So let me explain, let's just double check it's in here. I'm in my downloads folder, the files we just saved. Here we have themes, we have Astra, and I have functions. I'm going to open that, and we should see the same stuff, right? The search filter, the CSS, add in the search bar. We know we have this backed up. So when we go to execute this, we are going to lose that stuff for a second. We can just paste the code back in. One other call out, and John, this is I don't think we need to necessarily do this right now, but in my experience, and actually we do this for Invention Universe, maybe we could set up a staging server that is identical to this server. And when we go to run updates or do any tests, we're able to verify nothing breaks there before we do it in production.
Yeah.
Because if there's kids using this, teachers, members using this,
Mhm.
they're gonna go, where did the search bar go? Why did all the images get bigger? Why does it say read me now?
Yeah.
They search something like, why is the homepage there? Ah, this broke. They back up, right?
Mhm.
So the logic is, what I typically have is 3 environments: development, staging, and then I have my production. Development is where I'm experimenting with stuff. Staging is just a copy of production. And if I'm going to implement something from development or updates, I do it in staging, verify it. And then I roll staging up into production. Sometimes, depending on what type of company you are and what your application is, sometimes you can't roll staging up into development because the way everything's integrated, maybe users generate files. So if a user is creating documents that save, like let's say the users are uploading images, if you roll up your entire staging server, you're overwriting those folders. So sometimes you need to roll up pieces or specific files. So maybe you make a change, you measure the change, and then you just implement the change. You record what you did. Or if in the case of build up blocks, we know who we're editing. We are the editors. No member or somebody's going to lose a file. And if we tell everybody, hey, don't enter any build up blocks today, we're testing updates and we're going to roll it out, we'll update you by end of day. After that, you can go back to using it. This will not affect anybody on the front end. But now we don't have the risk of losing new data. So we have to kind of plan out our environments on how we're going to do this ongoing and plan how we communicate with the team, know who the editors are and how to communicate with them. Luckily, we're a small team. Luckily, there's no, member added content, user generated content. We're in a position where we can be pretty relaxed. I just think at least a staging server, send out an update to, maybe we have an email group, a thread where we just say, hey, we're doing updates, pause today. Hey, you can go again. And the risk of us actually losing something should be low because you should always update production prior to rolling out the update. So if someone says, hey, I uploaded 10 build-up blocks, where do they go? You can technically re-implement, the backup locally, export those 10 items and just import them later. So like, we don't have the risk of really losing as long as we have a procedure we follow. Backup production, test and staging, roll up production, staging into production, and make sure we have good communication between team members, and we should be okay. John, anything to add to that?
No, just top overview. Brent is absolutely right, especially when we have a lot of users and we're working with a corporate partner. We definitely want to have 3 servers: a development server, staging server, and a live server. At the moment, as Brent said, we're a small team and we're building a prototype. I'm not sure we need to spend a lot of time doing this immediately. As soon as we partner with a corporation, we will definitely do this. Okay.
All right, and then
But guys, a big picture here is, as I listen to Brent, it's crystal clear. You have to have a lot of expertise to manage an application like this, and that expertise, it's really valuable expertise. You pay a lot for that expertise. or it's worth a lot. And you guys, Ryan, Rodrigo, and Dan, at some point you have to decide, do you want to take the time to learn the kind of stuff Brent is teaching you? It's really, really valuable if you're going to be managing an application, but it's a lot of work to get to where Brent is.
And I think the exposure, so one way to frame this too in life for decision making, if this is something that you like but don't love, but you know you need, it's good to get through it at least a couple times. And then, you know, if you hire somebody, you can kind of tell if they're good, you know what their job is supposed to be. You can kind of flag somebody who's not a good subcontractor. So let's say you have a company. Dan, you're big on, wait, Dan is on, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
I had my like thing. Okay, yeah, I just said Cabrera. I saw your last names. I had the webcam stuff over to the side.
It's okay.
So I know you like art. You love to
Yeah.
make images and artwork. So you know the value of WordPress, but you might say, this is too much. I love art. I like tech, but I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to hire somebody. If somebody comes over to you and they start implementing changes and you see your live website getting edited and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, this is probably not the person I'm going to trust my business with long term, right?
Mm.
Just learning this will put you in a position on how to gauge people's abilities. You know, so understanding the role and the tools doesn't always mean you have to be doing it, but you'll be able to leverage that knowledge in the future to manage teams or manage, you know, who you hire. So that's also helpful.
Great. Well
Yeah,
put.
yeah.
Well put. Okay, we're nearing the end time. Let's wind this down, Brent.
Should I run updates or do some, or what do you think?
I
Next
don't.
week?
Yeah, next week. I'd like to. Yeah, let's just
Okay,
wind this down. We'll do next week. We're way over
sounds good.
half an hour.
So I think the takeaways from here is now we know how to back up. We were able to download the files, download the database, understand the server environment for the most part. One action item for the future, but not necessarily the immediate future, is just nail down what version of MySQL server we're using. That's helpful info, but not necessary. And then I guess on the table is the question of, are we in a, and John, this might be more for you, but we should decide if, should we have a second version of this to do updates on and then roll back just to one staging environment? Or should we just do it live and then fix any issues that come up? Either one's okay with me. I just don't know.
I think for the moment we'll skip the
Staging, okay.
Mhm.
So next week, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to updates. Another good thing about WordPress is if they know you start clicking around, they say, hey, you might lose your changes. So they don't let you make a mistake by just hitting back, which is nice. We'll need to update WordPress core, the plugins and the theme. And just so we have it documented, we have some functions we may need to copy and paste back into the theme. An action item for the future will be to set up a child theme that retains those edits. So when we update, we don't have to worry about losing those functions and copying and pasting them. So short term, we're going to run these updates, add back in the functions. And as we do each update, we'll do each plugin individually, each theme, you know, the single theme once, and then add the functions in the core file. And what we need to figure out is, does anything break? The reason we're going to check the site after each update is to just make sure we don't break anything. Like you'll see here, this update doesn't work with your current version of PHP. So we'll also have to update the PHP version on the site, which isn't that bad. And so we might have to figure out what order to do these in. That's going to be a little, you know, because we have to carry over a lot of updates we haven't done. Once that's done, it should be regular maintenance, pretty easy. The last thing to add is, as a wish list item for the future, we could probably implement some of the features that we did manually with functions within native WordPress. But since this is a prototype, and we ultimately will be, at some point probably update this stuff anyways. If we ever have a V2 of Build It blocks, anything we customize or use plugins for, I think we can do natively in the newest version of WordPress, which will reduce the amount of security risks. It will reduce the amount of updates, and it will reduce, it will minimize the likelihood of incompatibility with like different plugins. It reduces complexity overall in the application, and it will be as easy as just updating the core file basically in the theme. So, but that's a much bigger lift than just dealing with the updates on the existing application. So I call that one like, and if we were thinking about a roadmap, we just really want to get in a place where the site's up to date, easy to maintain, and we have regular backups happening. Down the road, we're going to want to have probably a simpler implementation of all this in as native as possible to the application. But again, that's really not a critical thing. So I think that's where I'll leave it. Does that make sense to you guys?
Perfect. Thank you, Brent.
Yeah, Brent, can you share with us the Google document you're working on, like the PowerPoint, please?
If you guys,
yeah, Brent, send that to me.
Okay.
And then I put all of your previous things in the general BIB specification. So I merged that with some, and then I'll send it to you, Dan.
Thank you.
It'd be great, Dan and Rodrigo and Ryan, if you could. I think it'd be great experience for you as well if you can manage our documentation for Build It blocks. I think that looked great on your resumes. Yeah, it'd be extremely valuable if you can say you know how to manage a complicated application like this. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, Brent.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brent.
Okay. Bye, Ryan. Bye, Rodrigo. Bye, Dan.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. All right,
John,
great,
quick
Brent.
question.
Yeah.
In terms of pacing, I know we're kind of setting the stage for them to understand.
Yeah.
I know it's not that interactive yet. Do we need to pivot to make it a little more interactive in upcoming ones? Probably.
Well, it's a great question, Brent. In general, I like to be more interactive, but your time is so valuable that I don't want to blow it just bringing Dan and Ryan and Rodrigo up to speed.
Gotcha. So more like having we get them in a position where they're comfortable, then they can kind of try it out and then circle back around with me if there's issues or anything.
Yeah, I think the exposure they had to you today was really valuable for them. I think you and Ari maybe need to spend a little bit of time together. And Ari and you, I hope, will sort of manage the project.
Yeah.
By the way, Brent, just put these hours on your timesheet. How long did it take you to do the ChatGPT summary? 30 minutes, 60 minutes?
60 seconds.
Yeah, okay. So nothing happened.
I'm not joking. Hold on. I literally went to YouTube, right?
Yeah.
I think I still have the YouTube video open. Let's
Yeah.
see. Like this is gonna be really funny because you're gonna be surprised at how easy this was.
Yeah.
I can do it before your next workshop.
Yeah.
All
right. So good. I got it. That's all I need. I don't need to know the details. I just need to know it's fairly quick. I'd like to think about making a prompt that cuts the summary in about a third. What I read was really interesting, but it seemed repetitive, a little bit repetitive. So maybe just the to-do list or the bulleted lists are a little more valuable in the first paragraph. So I want to cut it down. It's like you said in the middle of the meeting, if you give people too much documentation, they'll turn off.
Definitely. The prompt I included was literally just, here's the transcript, summarize.
Yeah. So.
And do you know how to get the transcript off of YouTube?
No, I don't, but I don't really want to. Yeah. Okay.
just hidden inside the under
Oh,
the description.
okay, cool.
So you just click the description, show transcript, and then you can
Wow.
toggle off timestamps.
Wow.
And then you don't even need to use a program like Descript. You can just copy and paste
Amazing.
from there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I was gonna say,
Yeah,
I don't want to know, but now that I see it, that's really,
it's so easy. You could even go back through the Build It Yourself YouTube archives, and you can take transcripts from old videos, run it through, and say, give me a description for this video, and better summarize,
yeah,
even on the channel and stuff.
yeah.
So it's pretty cool. But yeah, let me let you go. I know you have another workshop starting.
Okay,
Anytime you want to talk AI, I'm more than happy to.
great. Thanks, Brent. Just keep
Great.
your hours on your timesheet.
All right, sounds good. Bye, John.
Okay, bye, Brent. Hey, Michael.
Oh, hello.
Great, thanks for joining. You had any experience or any interest in WordPress
Uh,
in your
really?
work experience, or any
Not
of the
really.
companies you've interviewed asked for WordPress experience?
Uh,
Not
any
really.
rarely.
Yeah, yeah. So our Build It Blocks application is based on WordPress, and I just Googled over 40% of all the websites on the internet, uh, which is 40%, as almost a billion websites are based on WordPress. That's amazing to me, but
Oh wow.
I didn't realize WordPress was that popular. Hmm.
Yeah, I would assume like
Yeah,
maybe HTML, CSS or something like that.
yeah,
Another more popular language. But
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so it turns out Shaq Simpson and RA aren't going to be able to join today for a variety of reasons. So I suggested to Leslie, he may still join, but I suggested that he wait till next week when the whole team is here. The goal is for you all to meet Leslie. We're trying to recruit him to be uh, to help us do business development.
See.
So I think we can make this meeting relatively quick, just you, Wizzy, and just you, Wizzy, and me. Okay. Hi, Wisdom. Hi, Wisdom.
Good day.
Great. Thanks for joining. Okay, it turns out Jack Simpson are traveling, and Ari has a final exam, so just going to be the three of us today. And I suggested to Leslie that he join next week instead when he can meet the whole team. We're trying to recruit Leslie to be our lead business developer and maybe ultimately the CEO of the company. So it's important that he has confidence in our development teams. And if you guys can be prepared to just share in a minute or two, what you're learning from Build It Yourself and why you think Invention Universe is a valuable asset. Okay. Take it away, Michael. You want to
Oh,
update?
okay. Yeah. Um. See. Wait. Or for this week, I just fixed the doors on the left and right lab view.
Okay. This door has to be a lot smaller. It spills into the floor.
On the left one,
Yeah,
I see.
it should be like right
I
here.
Yeah, I assumed it was the same size as the right one, but okay.
Yeah, so
It should be really small. Okay.
yeah, it should be. It shouldn't be into the floor, right? Doesn't make sense. It's
Yeah.
it's like a hatch that you step through.
I see.
Yeah. And in fact, that's really one of the reasons I zeroed in on this whole scaling issue. And then the other thing here is this
Yeah,
it has to be inside.
okay.
Yeah.
And I know the center is like kind of screwed up, like on the bottom. I need to fix that, but
Center, it looks good to me.
on
I
the
see
bottom, yeah.
I got
So
the file name, yeah.
it's out of position, so I need to fix that.
Okay.
But yeah, this week is just really basic work I just did just to make the left and right doors bigger. Then
Okay.
yeah, they should use the they
So
this
that hatch looks good there, but the door
yeah, the door needs to be bigger, I think,
needs
right?
to be flush. It
Oh,
needs to be lined up with the bottom, with the floor, basically. In the
I see.
original view, it was lined up perfectly to the gold bar on the bottom.
I see.
When you first opened it, the portal on the left spilled into the floor, but the door on the right was perfectly lined up.
Uh, so would it be lined up to like this or up
Yes,
here?
exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah. Think about it when you're scaling it, you know. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It should be like a real lab, I guess, or
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
yeah.
might conflict with the strategy you're using to scale. I don't know. The doors have to be anchored.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. In the original version, they were, at least the doors were, not the portal. No matter what you scaled it, how you zoomed it, the doors stayed aligned to that bottom ring.
Was it because like the background lab image included the door already, or did it
Not
actually just
sure.
scale by itself?
I'm not sure. I'm
I
not sure.
think this position fixed.
Mm,
Um, but because
Position fixed. Like I feel they fixed the position to
yeah.
those places. So probably once is a smaller screen, probably the dot just reduces in size, but the position is fixed.
Mm,
yeah, yeah, I think that could be fixing. Yeah, I'll have to see.
okay. Okay. But you get the two issues there, or three issues really. The portal has to be smaller. The door has to be aligned to the bottom gold bar, no matter how the window is scaled. And then the avatar spills over into the frame of the screen. That square that's another scaling issue.
Mm-hmm.
So everything on the screen should be inside the frame, should be in the blue area.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll work on that next week.
Okay,
Um,
great.
uh,
While you're at it, Michael, there's one other scaling issue. Can you share your screen again?
sure.
And can you back out to the lab view? I mean, to the planet view? Just go through the portal door. Now, this lab, it looks okay here, but it's squished on the present version. Actually, let me share my screen. I'm gonna do this.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think it's squished too.
Yeah,
Like it's kind of like this, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's squished. So it needs to be about 75% higher.
Mhm.
I'll show you that on the bug list that I've made. Okay, great. Wisdom, I'm really eager to see what you've done. I applaud your initiative. As I said, I love that you execute your ideas lightning fast. You're doing all the right things. I have a concern that number one, we stick within our budget, and number two, that we pay careful attention to planning before we code. It's much easier to change something in PowerPoint, for most of us anyway, than it is to change it in the code. We can experiment with different looks and feels in PowerPoint much more easier than we can if we're coding something. So I hope I make that clear. I don't want to discourage your initiative and your fast response time. Wizzy, I love that. I just want to make sure we're conscious of the development process. Let's measure before we cut. And let's be very conscious of our time and money budget. Wisdom, is that clear?
Sure.
Great. Okay. I think the feature you're working on, the more I think about it, the more important a feature it is when we're trying to sell Invention Universe to corporate partners and to parents. We want to position your kids to have a good college application. We want to position your kids to be able to get into the colleges of their choice. The PDF format of Invention Universe is a very important part of that. So thanks for picking that out and executing it.
All right, thank you. Okay, probably I'll share my screen to show what I've done so far.
Sure.
Okay. This is my planet.
Great.
What I click on the lab. Okay.
It's
Right.
really great that you're creating a planet you're proud of. I think your planet looks cool. And when we're demonstrating IU, it's great if we all have our own personal planet that is a model planet. Great.
Okay. So I added a button here to preview portfolio. So once the user clicks on it, it directs them to their personal portfolio page. And all of this information is generated from the lab data.
Great.
Okay, I think, all right. Let me just shift this down. So yeah, once I click on this download portfolio, I think, okay, I can save this, and once I open this, I downloaded. So I think I have a mistake here. Let me get back to, okay.
Way cool.
I think my PDF extension is trying to open it.
So you show a preview, and that preview view is just a JPEG?
Sorry, let me.
And you're
Let me off
converting the
this.
JPEG to a PDF?
Yes, exactly.
Great.
Wait. Okay. I think it should open now. No mistake. Sorry.
No worries. The logic of what you're doing and the way you design the user interface is tremendous. I mean, I really like it. I have a couple of suggestions.
Yeah, so it changes it to a PDF.
Ah, okay. Nice.
My extension was a bit slowing down. So this it generates, okay. I think I should up something in my code and let me just up this.
Cool. Cool. Okay. And there, is it one page or is it more than one page?
It's just one page.
Yeah.
Let me set it so proper. Sorry, I was testing out something, so I forgot to revert it to the normal
Hey,
flow.
I get it completely from what you're showing it. I mean,
Okay. So now let me just go back to, let me show you another planet. So if I go back, let's say I pick this planet. So the user can go to the lab view. I think this should be the lab. So once they click on their lab, they would see a button called Preview Portfolio. So if you're not that user, you'll not be able to see this button. So it will just show you the normal page. But if you're the user, you'll be able to see your preview portfolio. So once you click on it, it takes you to your portfolio page. And here you have this. So you say the person's name, their hometown, the country, the eventual universe details, skills, hobbies, and the project I've done.
can you go back? Because it doesn't look to me like it got the right data. I know Lucid, and he's not from India. Oh, man, oh, wait a second. This is a different Lucid.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So from everything is it's totally dynamic from the lab data.
Oh, okay. So
The quick preview portfolio, it takes them to their portfolio page and definitely gets a few data. So they call me, they click on download portfolio, and okay, I think I need to edit this extra page. So once they open it, they get this a PDF. But I have some things I need to finish touching to make it look proper. But this is just the basic logic
okay,
I've done.
great. Wizzy, before you spend any more time coding, let's back up a little and look at the PowerPoint spec.
I was just doing the foundation for what we are going to do. So this is just the base level for where I'm meant to start from.
Yeah, okay. But I registered in one of your Discord messages that it was a little tricky to capture a picture of the planet. And I suggested let's just put the avatar up there. I assume that would be easier, and maybe it would take a little less space.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe if not the avatar, maybe the laboratory. But I think the avatar is probably the right thing. Kind of like LinkedIn. LinkedIn has your picture of your avatar in the upper corner. If we
Oh yeah,
if we make
that
this
would be
if we make this an artistic version of a LinkedIn homepage, that might be, you know, a style we should think about. And then the other thing is, I want to, I mean, I really applaud the initiative you took to design this. I think there's some very interesting things happening here that I wouldn't have thought of. I love that it looks so artistic rather than LinkedIn-like. But I want to emphasize their statement, their goal or their statement, just like an artist does. the first thing an artist does very often when they show their portfolio is they have a short paragraph on their philosophical statement. And then I also want to put a link to a video, maybe of the artist reading their statement. And then I'd like to think about adding to this page links to their projects, links to their Scratch project, links to their website, links to videos of their robots. So I see you have projects here. Under projects, there should be links to those projects.
Okay.
Well, you do
For
have to.
Sorry.
Sorry.
okay. For now, the data that generated is the lab is from the lab data, except once they get to this place, we'll add more features to this page to enable them or add their description, this what do you call it, videos to their links, links to their videos and other things they need to add.
Yeah, but Wizzy, do you understand when we're trying to get feedback from the field on, is this the right layout? If we give them a JPEG, it's a pain in the neck to edit it. If this is done in PowerPoint, we can make edits much, much easier. We can make suggestions much, much easiher. So I would appreciate it if you could put this in a PowerPoint page in the spec, so that I can say, let's put the statement right up on top. Let's make a avatar button like LinkedIn. I can't edit this if you give me a JPEG.
This is not a picture. I had coded it in HTML, so I'll just change it to PowerPoint.
Yeah, just lay out roughly what you've got in PowerPoint, and then it's much easier for to get feedback from others. Is this the right design? I mean, we'd like to show this to an admissions officer at at Cornell or MIT. If we have those contacts, and we want to give them something that they can easily edit before we execute. Does that make sense, Wizzy?
Sure, I will do that.
Okay. And yeah, make sure we keep our documentation up. We don't do it when the project is all done. The documentation should be done in parallel with development. I mean, we should start it first before we develop, and then gradually evolve it as we get feedback from the field and as the programmer executes.
All right, great.
So documentation is critical. Okay, great. Anything else, Wizzy?
Sure. So the goal is to add links to their videos and a goal, probably a description of what they want to do or about them.
Yeah, yeah. If you can give me a PowerPoint that I can edit, I'll put my suggestions in your PowerPoint documentation.
I'll do that this week and get sent it to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Let me just, Michael, take the last few minutes to share my screen, and let me go to a bug report I'm making. So we're getting feedback from the field now, and here's the example. The lab is squished because this bird was originally set to sit right on the top of the lab, so we can see how much it's squished by roughly. And I'm just trying to document feedback we're getting from the field. And then imported all of that into our Invention Universe wish list. So we have a bug report. And then we have our setup wish list. I think some of this has to be updated. And then we have our feature wish list. Setup is like infrastructure wish list, and then our feature wish list. And when we get bugs from the field, I'm just going to attach them at the bottom here. We should try to coach people when they give us feedback to tell us all the information we need to troubleshoot the bug, including what operating system they're working on, what platform. Michael, does this make sense as a way of keeping track of bugs? And in general,
Wait.
Michael, what I'd like to do over the next few weeks is back off on feature development and focus on testing what we've done over the past 9 months. Focus on testing and bringing that to the live server and having our members use the new feature, audio search, PDF.
On the on the issue of documentation, I suggest that we move to like using Google Docs, Google
Yeah.
Sheets,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
for this
Thank
like
you.
yeah, even for this like wish list, like when you edit it, it's only on your like local computer, right?
Yep,
So if
yep,
we
yep.
have like
Absolutely. Absolutely, we should do that. Should be on Google Docs. I mean, I'd like to get someone who's responsible for documentation, and it should be an intern to manage all of this. So let me ask one of our interns if they can join this meeting and be responsible for taking all of our documentation and putting it on Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Docs, and on Google Drive. Does that make sense?
yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah. Right now it's on Dropbox and we have that capability, but I'm getting the feeling that we're going to have to switch from Dropbox to Google Slides. Even though Dropbox gets reviewed as being more secure and a better collaborative environment than Google Sheets. I think it's a little bit more complicated to, and more people are familiar with Google Docs.
Mhm.
So we're probably going to have to switch all of our documentation from Dropbox to Google Docs. Okay, anything else?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Wizzy, I hope you'll be comfortable helping us troubleshoot, get feedback and troubleshoot all of the features we've added over the past few months, rather than tackle new features. I think, we need to make sure we can start testing the features we've already developed. And scaling, zooming and zooming in and scrolling is a really, really important feature, Michael.
Mhm.
And I'm understanding that it's much more complicated than I originally thought to be responsive, to be truly responsive.
Yeah, like um editing code instead of like just writing it from scratch like makes it slightly harder. Like I would rather just like rewrite everything because um um most of the time it's just me looking at the
Yeah,
existing implementation and then trying to keep as much of it as possible, and then that's like taking up more time than like
yeah.
I would.
So you're thinking rewriting all of our display code? That's a huge,
Um,
no?
for the lab view, I guess like some of it, I might do something like that. Just as long as it looks um to
Okay,
the
so
original design.
again, I would like to know how big a task that is before we allocate money
Yeah,
for that.
yeah, I won't do it yet, but if it maybe if I'm getting nowhere, then I would consider it. But
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that um, remodeling a house is often more expensive than tearing it down and rebuilding it. I've seen that happen many, many times. But I don't want to do that really until we have a corporate partner that helps fund that and helps and tells us how responsive do we really need to be. So being infinitely responsive is just a huge, huge task. I can see that coming. Do you have any experience on this issue, Wizzy, of how responsive does an application need to be?
Sure. I've done a lot of e-commerce websites, and you had to make it very responsive.
Mhm. So, yeah. Okay. I don't want to go down that path until we absolutely have to. I'd rather say it's not going to work on an iPad, or I mean, should work on an iPad, but it only works on a Windows desktop at a certain resolution. Michael, it would be helpful if I understood the scope of what you're proposing.
yeah, it was just a dot. I haven't really like
Mhm,
um seen all the code. Maybe like it's really not a couple of files, not a lot of line of code, but
mhm,
um yeah, I will. Plus,
mhm,
I probably need to spend a little bit more time this week.
That's like we have like a list of resolutions like we're working with. Like let's say for instance, we have like 600 px, 1900, some set of resolutions. So like at each breakpoint, we make it responsive. So it covers a range of devices under that resolution.
mhm.
Then also we do it for the next breakpoint. So by the time like we are done with the media queries and editing, basically once they're resizing, no matter the device, it's once it gets to that breakpoint, it's be able to adjust perfectly well.
Yeah,
Right.
using media queries, right? And CSS. Um,
Right. So our original spec was to be for this to work on the original iPad, 1024 by 786. That was the idea we had, Michael, when we were saying, let's make the views fit in this resolution and then just scroll and zoom this resolution.
mhm.
Mhm.
I'll work with that.
I'm sorry, Wizzy, I didn't come through.
I said that would be a great start.
Yeah, yeah. This is our original spec 10 years ago. Okay, so Michael, if you could give some thought to how can we make scaling in the lab view? On the planet view and in the universe view, it's sort of okay. It is okay. It's just that scrolling and zooming is a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I'll spend some more
Things
time.
stay together when you scroll and zoom. It's just that on all platforms, on different platforms, scrolling and zooming is different keys. And so it makes it very hard to advise a kid if they're on one platform, if they're on the Mac, you know, they have different zoom and scrolling keys than if they're on Windows.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking maybe we need to have a zoom and scroll buttons right on the screen.
Yeah, that would probably like be the easiest for a user to just
Yeah, yeah,
realize to scroll.
yeah, yeah.
That is
So
great.
let's give some thought, Michael, rather than to executing, to specifying and scoping out what's the minimum work we can do to make this demonstratable to a corporate partner and enable a relatively few number of members, maybe 100 members, to make impressive planets. Those are our goals for Invention Universe until we get a corporate partner that will give us the resources and the guidance we need to bring this to a mass market. Does that big
Yep.
picture goal make sense? We want to make a demonstratable version so we can get corporate support. And we want to make a prototype that enables roughly 100 of our best members to make planets as cool as the one that Wizzy made. Okay, so it
Yeah.
allows us to make planets like this. Okay, good for this week. Thanks, Wizzy. Thanks, Michael. See you next Sunday.
Yep. See you next Sunday.
All right, good. I'll look for your PowerPoint, Wizzy, please.
Sure, do that and get to you.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay.
bye guys. Have a good rest of
Sorry,
the
I
day.
have a question, sorry.
Sure.
When would we start testing the features?
We're testing them right now. But we need to bring them live. Some of the features that we've developed are not on the live server, like search. So that's another issue. Michael, I'll put this in an email to you. Maybe we can take this online. How can we gradually put the new features? I saw that Zinsin's audio features are live. We want to bring some of the other features, the search feature in particular, live so we can start testing that. Good question, Wizzy.
Thank you.
So, Michael, we need to make a plan for how can we bring some of these features live without breaking data. Let me generate an email to you, Michael, and let's deal with this offline.
Okay, sure.
Okay, great. Okay, guys.
Thank you.
To be continued next week.
Yeah,
Bye.
see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Wizzy.